these are the 148 models. What we do now is we have to figure out a sensible way to filter the airplanes out that don't meet your parameters. Honestly, what would be the maximum budget that you would want to spend?
30 mil.
Okay. Do you want to have one section, two sections, or three sections? There's 4 or 5 or 6 people in a section. What do you think is?
It needs to be 8 minimum.
8 minimum. So now we're down to 58. The next one is the maximum range. So the longest trip from A to B, where do you think that would be 5 or 6 times a year?
I'd say farthest realistic, I don't know, maybe Dubai to London.
This is the range that you can go nonstop. Okay, so anywhere in Europe, you can make it to South Africa, and you can make it to Singapore. However, this is with no wind. All right, so now, this was the winds last week at 35,000 feet. So, what this means is that you're gonna be able to fly faster when you're going east, and you're not gonna be able to go as far on range, or it's gonna take you longer when you're going west. You can see that here, you can make Singapore with all these airplanes. But if you were to start now in Singapore, you watch this is so you can see, if I go to Singapore, you are just barely. Matter of fact, if the winds get a little bit worse and get to 75 knots average, you're not gonna make it back in that G280.
Before Steve started asking Iman questions, he said the phrase, "We have to figure out a sensible way to filter the airplanes out that don't meet your parameters." He didn't just start peppering Iman with questions. When you're on a sales call with a prospect, especially that first sales discovery call with a prospect, it's important they understand the reason why you're asking questions. If they don't, they're gonna get defensive and feel uncomfortable. That phrase that Steve used to kick off that meeting was a mini agenda.
One of the things people don't ever ask, which they absolutely should ask, is how much baggage can I put in my airplane? You can see that this number is the 6.4 cubic meters of luggage, and this is half. And I can tell you, this is a nightmare question. Every time somebody has an airplane, they never ask this question, and this is the most important thing of every flight.
I really like how Steve shared a question with Iman that most customers in these conversations fail to ask, but it's an important question to talk through and understand. Customers are not going to come out and say, "Hey Matt, what am I not asking that I should?" Do what Steve did and proactively bring these questions up. Chris, you didn't ask this throughout our conversation, but it's an important question to consider and talk through when it comes to your needs for this project to make sure it's a successful project and we're the right fit for you. Proactively bringing questions up like that around concerns they might have about buying your product or service to make sure it's the right fit. That shows that you're a true consultative seller, and that separates the amateur salespeople from the professional salespeople that close at a high clip.
So this is 100% scale, okay? So I'm 6 foot, I'm 180. This is the exact size. And so if I wanted to take, let's say, the seats on the Gulfstream and compare it to the Challenger, that's the difference in the aisle width. It doesn't look like too big of a deal. You're getting a little bit more aisle width, but really where you see the difference is when we look at the floor plan. So this is 100% scale of the Gulfstream 550. You got the kitchen door here, the galley door, and most airplanes, the front section has these 4 single seats. This is really the normal setup. So the G550, this is what it looks like outside, and this is what it looks like inside. So you can see it's got those 3 sections. This is the door that closes off, and you got that bedroom back there and the bathroom behind it. This airplane's got, for the class, it's got the biggest window. See how big that window is?
Yeah.
It's huge window. This is twice the size of, let's say, the windows on the airlines. Up front, you have a really big kitchen. Flight attendant can prepare anything. They can bring your food from Whole Foods, or you can get it from Harry's Bar, or wherever you want it. And you can get it from whatever place you want, but it's nice when it's prepared fresh on there.
This wall that Steve created, it might be one of the greatest sales tools of all time. I view the wall as Steve's demo environment. If you notice, Steve is only sharing relevant information on that wall based on the answers to his questions, based on Iman's parameters. Demos fall flat because they are not focused. When you're demoing your SaaS product, only show the features that solve your prospects' use cases and problems. That's it. The phrase, "we can also," overwhelms buyers.
Let's say this airplane, you're going to fly it 350 hours a year, and you're going to pay $450 a gallon, okay? That airplane's going to cost about $3.6 million a year to run it, okay, which is about $10,000 an hour. Really, the main thing, there's 3 things you could do to interior. The soft goods, which is all the fabrics, whether it's the side panels, the ceiling, the seats, the carpet, that kind of stuff. Then the other part is the color of the wood. And then the other one is moving furniture around. To move furniture around is very, very expensive. They have to redo engineering drawings. I mean, literally on a G550, just to give you an idea, if you wanted to change this couch to 2 chairs, it would cost about $400,000.
What percentage of jet owners would you say just genuinely have it for personal use or corporate use? 2/3.
It's one third of all airplanes are out on the charter for third-party charters.
Because I think that's probably one of the things that most people don't understand. It's, okay, cool, very nice, you bought your jet, this, that. Now you're down $3 million a year just to maintain it and upkeep it. Are you seeing that more and more jet owners are buying it, understanding that, you know, for example, in my position, I'm spending maybe $400,000 or $500,000 a year on jet charters. You know, why don't I buy a jet myself, and then why don't I charter it out in the meantime?
Well, that is a great question. When you're operating it, when you have an airplane, the budget is broken up into 2 things. You got fixed cost and you have variable cost. Fixed cost is what you have to pay whether you fly 1 hour or 400 hours. Okay, it's the pilot salaries, it's the insurance, it's the hangar, all those things, whether you move the airplane or not, you pay. And then every hour you fly it, you have fuel, landing fees, catering, pilots, hotels, Eurocontrol, flight, all that kind of stuff. So the variable cost per hour is $5,700. So if you're flying 400 hours a year, it costs you $4,000 an hour fixed cost, plus 50, so it's $9,500 an hour. But if you start flying more hours, then this is less per hour, so it's cheaper to fly per hour the more you fly it. If you're able to charter this airplane for $12,000 an hour, dollars we're talking about, and every hour is costing you half that, that means you're making $6,000 an hour profit, not including fixed costs. If you can charter the airplane out for 200 hours, that's 200 times 6, you're making a profit of $1.2 million. That comes off of this, and now your fixed costs are only $400,000. So if you're flying now half the 200 hours and you're renting it out for 200 hours, if you get this to $400,000 and you're flying 200 hours a year, it's $2,000 an hour, plus this, so now it's costing you $7,500 an hour. And the more you fly it, the cheaper it gets. You'll say, well, I can go rent it out 300 hours a year. You can, but you know, every other day you're gonna get a phone call. You have to give owner approval, and you're gonna say, well, who is it? And, you know, I just did the interior. I don't want them to have red wine. I don't want them to smoke. I don't want them to have a dog. I don't want them to have a coffee, yeah? Because they're gonna spit on the carpet, and on a Gulfstream, to replace the carpet, it's $70,000. So, or if you have a kid who's chartering the plane, he has a Sharpie and he's, oh, mommy, and right across the wall on the suede, and you're not going to get it out, so you have to replace the pan. These kind of things are inconvenient.
I wish we were able to see the end of the conversation to see how Steve closed out the conversation with Iman. I take it that when you're selling million-dollar private jets to billionaires, it's not going to be a one-call close. It's probably going to be a long sales cycle. I'm sure Iman's going to have a lot more conversations with Steve over the next 6 months, year, 2 years to make sure he's making the right decision. But I'm sure Steve has a really defined and focused follow-up strategy in place to stay on Iman's radar, sending relevant content, relevant information based on Iman's parameters, based on what Iman wants in his future private jet. But Steve, if by some chance you might be watching this video in your nice London office, that would be a really cool video to see how you close out your meetings. That's an interest of mine, and I'm sure it's an interest of lots of other people as well. My biggest takeaway from this video, from this sales conversation, is Steve is an expert in his product. He knows the ins, he knows the outs, he knows all the questions the prospect should be asking. He's bringing those up in a conversation. He's not trying to force sell a private jet upon Iman. I did not get the sense of that whatsoever. He's being a true consultant and giving Iman all the information he needs to make the right decision.